My wife cheated with my best friend, then secretly our property deeds to steal our $250, $0 retirement fund. Now she's claiming she has rights to the house and money in court. I never thought I'd be the guy who gets like this, but here I am. My wife seemed perfect at first, beautiful, charming, the kind of woman everyone. We'd been married for about 10 years, and honestly, I thought we had a good thing going. We had our ups and downs, sure, but nothing that screamed betrayal. That was until I noticed the little things, her phone constantly buzzing, her avoiding certain questions, and her suddenly disappearing for hours without explanation. It started about 3 months ago. Had been acting weird, distracted, short-tempered, and oddly secretive. She'd leave her phone face down on the counter, which was unusual for her. At first, I thought maybe she was just stressed at work or dealing with some personal stuff. But then I caught her in a lie. She told me she was working late one Friday night, but I found her car parked at a motel just a few miles from our house. I saw her through the window, in a room with a guy I didn't recognize, and I knew immediately this wasn't just work, it was something more. That day I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. I watched her through that window, her laughing, touching him. My stomach twisted and I couldn't breathe for a second. I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was right there. I snapped a picture, though I didn't confront her that night. I just drove home numb, trying to process what I'd seen. Over the next few days, I started noticing more things. Her phone was always locked, even when she went to the bathroom. She'd make excuses when I asked about her sudden need for privacy, saying she was just working on something or talking to a friend. I found unfamiliar messages on her phone, flirty, suggestive texts from a number I didn't recognize. When I confronted her, she called me paranoid, said I was imagining things, that she was faithful and I was just insecure. But I knew better. I could see the lies piling up like a wall I couldn't break through. What hurt the most wasn't just the affair. It was the way. She lied so effortlessly, like I was stupid enough not to notice. Had always been bitchy when called out, turning everything around to make me look like the villain. She'd say I was overreacting, that I was jealous, that I was paranoid. But I was. I saw her with my own eyes. Still, I didn't want to jump to conclusions without proof, so I kept digging. One night, I decided to do some digging of my own. I got access to our shared computer, and I started looking through her emails and messages. What I found made my blood run cold. There were exchanges with her lover, calls, texts, plans to meet up. But what really shocked me was the financial stuff. She had secretly been forging our property deeds, apparently trying to transfer our house and our retirement fund of $250, $0 into her name. I couldn't believe what I was reading. My mind started racing. How long had she been planning this? How much did she think she could get away with? That's when I realized the full extent of her betrayal. It wasn't just the affair, she was actively stealing from us. I felt sick, betrayed, furious. I knew I had to confront her, but I also knew I had to be careful. This wasn't just about cheating anymore. This was about her trying to take everything I worked for. I had a sinking feeling that the woman I'd loved and trusted for years was turning into someone I didn't even recognize. And I knew, deep down, I had to do something. But what? That was the question I couldn't answer yet. The confrontation came sooner than I expected, and it was everything I feared it would be. I couldn't hold back anymore. I waited until she was home late one evening, knowing she'd be tired, vulnerable. I had all the evidence laid out, screenshots of the emails, the forged documents, the texts she'd sent her lover, Mark. I wanted her to see it all at once, to understand that I knew everything. When she walked in, her face was tired but still bitchy, like she thought she was in control. I didn't give her the chance to deny anything. I just dumped the evidence on the table and looked her straight in the eyes. "Tell me what this is," I said coldly, sliding the documents across to her. Her eyes widened and her face instantly turned pale. She stammered, trying to spin some bullshit about how I was overreacting, that it was just a misunderstanding, that she loved me. She said she was feeling neglected, that I never paid attention to her anymore, and that Mark was just a friend. That she never meant to hurt me, but she was lonely, and she made a mistake. She looked me in the eye and told me she deserved her rights to the house and the money because she'd been working so hard to keep the family afloat, even if it was with lies. I was furious. I felt the betrayal burn deep in my chest. How stupid had I been? How blind? I'd trusted her with everything, our life savings, our future, and she was out there scheming behind my back. I told her I knew about the forgery, the affair, everything. Her reaction. She called me paranoid, said I was accusing her of things I just made up, and that I was crazy for doubting her love. She even had the nerve to cry, to act like the victim. I didn't know whether to scream or cry myself. I just stood there trying to keep my composure, feeling like I was losing my mind. This wasn't some petty fight. This was her literally trying to steal our house, our retirement, everything we built. I realized then that my wife had become someone I didn't recognize, bitchy, manipulative, and utterly selfish. I saw her lying through her teeth, trying to convince me she was innocent, but I knew better. Her false tears, her fake apologies, they meant nothing anymore. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing. I kept thinking about everything, her lies, her betrayal, her greed. How could she do this? How could she think she had a right to our house, to our savings, after everything? I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and a profound sense of loss. I'd loved her once, believed in us, but now I saw her for what she really was, a liar, a cheat, a thief. I spent the next day trying to process what to do. Part of me wanted to just walk away, cut my losses, and rebuild somewhere else. But I knew she'd never let go of her plans so easily. She had already started forging documents, trying to claim the house legally. I was facing a nightmare, her claiming rights to everything and me left with nothing. I realized I had to fight back, not just emotionally but legally. That's when I started talking to a lawyer. I wanted to understand my options, how deep her scheme went, and what I could do to protect what was mine. I also started digging into her financial records more thoroughly, trying to find any other holes in her story. It was a shock to see how calculated she'd been, how she'd planned this entire betrayal for months. I felt betrayed not only by her actions, but by the fact that I'd been so blind, so trusting. Honestly, I felt like I was in some kind of nightmare I couldn't wake up from. My wife, the woman I'd loved for so long, was now a stranger who was willing to destroy everything for greed and a quick thrill with Mark. She lied, cheated, manipulated, and now she was trying to steal our future. I knew I had to decide whether to fight her or walk away. But either way, I was determined to take back what was mine and make sure she paid for what she'd done. The legal process moved faster than I expected, and honestly, I wasn't prepared for how complicated it would get. I thought I'd just present the evidence, argue my case, and that would be the end of it. Nope. My wife, she's good at twisting things, and her lawyer was even better. She started claiming she had rights to the house and the retirement fund because she was entitled to her share, even though she'd forged deeds and lied about her whereabouts for months. I remember sitting in the lawyer's office, feeling like I was about to drown. Side kept spinning stories, claiming she'd been misled and tricked into signing documents she never understood. She had the nerve to call herself a victim, saying I was trying to ruin her, that I was just jealous because she found happiness with Mark. I wanted to scream. How could she be so brazen? She was the one sneaking around, forging papers, and trying to steal everything we had, yet she's the victim now. The court hearings were intense. Showed up with her bitchy attitude, acting like she was the injured party, even crying fake tears. She told the judge that she deserved her rights because she'd been working hard and sacrificing to keep the family afloat. Meanwhile, her lawyer argued that she was a victim of my paranoia and controlling behavior. I felt sick listening to her lie so effortlessly. I'd never seen her like this, manipulative, cold, lying through her teeth. I kept pushing to get the truth out, to show the court the forged documents and the evidence of her affair. I wanted the judge to see the real greedy, manipulative, and utterly selfish. I also brought in experts to examine the forged deeds. Their reports confirmed that she had altered the signatures, records, and tried to transfer our property without my consent. It was clear she'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. The worst part, kept insisting that she had rights because she was my wife. She said she was entitled to half of everything, even though she was the one who'd betrayed me, cheated, and tried to steal from us. That was when I snapped inside. I told the court that I'd worked hard for our retirement fund, that I'd sacrificed years to save that money, and I wasn't going to let her just take it because she wanted to play housewife-turned-thief. The judge eventually ordered a temporary injunction, was barred from accessing the house or the retirement fund until the case was settled. I could breathe a little easier, but I knew this was just the beginning. She was already trying to find loopholes, filing more papers, claiming she had rights under some obscure law. I felt like I was fighting a war I couldn't see the end of. Every day, I was waiting for the next surprise, the next lie, the next attack. Meanwhile, I started digging into her financial background even further, trying to uncover any other secrets. I found bank accounts she never told me about, investments in her name, and even a few shady side deals. It was clear she'd been planning this for a long time. That realization made me sick. How someone I loved and trusted could become so cold, so calculating. It was like discovering a stranger had been living with me all these years. Honestly, I was emotionally drained. I'd gone from feeling betrayed to feeling furious, then to a kind of numbness. I kept asking myself how I missed all this. How did I not see that was capable of doing something so manipulative? I felt stupid, naive even. But at the same time, I knew I had to stay strong for myself, for the truth, for the life I wanted to salvage from this mess. I kept telling myself that I'd get through this, that I'd fight for what's right. But inside, I was hurting. Deep down, I was mourning the loss of the woman I thought I knew, and I was angry at myself for trusting her so blindly all those years. I knew I'd need time to heal, to rebuild, and to figure out what my future looked like now that everything I believed in had been shattered. The fallout from all this was like a storm that never quite settled. Even with the court orders in place, wasn't done. She started making desperate moves, filing more legal claims, trying to challenge the evidence, and even accusing me of harassment for simply protecting myself. I couldn't believe how far gone she was. It was like she was willing to burn everything down just to get her hands on the house and the money. One day, she showed up at my office unannounced, her face twisted with anger and desperation. She claimed she had rights to the house because she'd been married to me for so long, that I was just trying to ruin her reputation, and that she deserved to get her fair share. She even threw in some tears, trying to guilt me into backing down. I just looked at her and told her I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. That was when I learned she'd been secretly working with a lawyer behind my back, trying to find loopholes. She'd even hired a private investigator to dig up dirt on me, trying to find some way to discredit me or get the court to side with her. I felt like I was living in a nightmare. I'd been betrayed not just emotionally but legally and financially. My entire life was under attack, and I had no idea how to stop it. The worst moment came when I discovered she had already transferred a significant portion of our retirement funds into an offshore account. She'd done it right before the court injunction, trying to hide her tracks. I was furious. That money was supposed to secure my future, and she was trying to take it all from under my nose. I felt helpless, overwhelmed by her cunning and greed. At this point, I realized I had to take more drastic action. I hired a forensic accountant and a private investigator myself. We uncovered a web of lies, fake documents, and hidden accounts. It was clear she'd been planning this for months, maybe even years. It made me question everything, including the life I'd shared with her. How could someone I loved so much turn into this manipulative, greedy person? Meanwhile, she kept insisting she had rights because she was my wife, that I was just trying to control her. Her voice was full of venom, and her lies became more blatant. She told the judge she was just trying to protect her interests, even though she'd forged deeds and stolen from us. That day, I realized her true nature. She was a liar and a thief, and she was willing to destroy everything to get what she wanted. I felt the weight of betrayal crushing me, but also knew I had to keep fighting. I could let her win. I started building my case, gathering all the evidence I could, witness statements, bank records, forensic reports. It was a long, exhausting process, but I knew I had no choice. I had to protect what was left of my life, my future, and the money I'd spent years earning. The emotional toll was heavy. I kept questioning myself. How did I not see her true colors sooner? How could I have trusted her after all this? But I also knew that dwelling on the past wouldn't help. I had to focus on the future and on exposing her lies. I was angry, yes, but I was also determined. This was her game, and I was going to make sure I played it better. I wasn't going to let her steal everything I worked so hard for. The court battles dragged on for months, and every hearing felt like a new punch to the gut. His lawyer kept throwing up new objections, claiming I was harassing her or that I was trying to ruin her reputation. Meanwhile, I was pouring every penny I had into legal fees, trying to build a case strong enough to expose her schemes once and for all. One day, I got hold of some bank statements from her offshore account. It was like opening a floodgate. The money she'd hidden away was enough to buy a small house outright, more than enough to cover the entire value of our retirement fund. I couldn't believe how brazen she'd been. All this time, I thought we were building a future together, and she was secretly draining our savings and planning to run away with it. That was the day I decided enough was enough. I sat down with my lawyer and laid out a plan. We filed a final motion to freeze her assets and to have all her claims dismissed. I knew she'd fight tooth and nail, but I also knew I had the evidence to back me up. The forged deeds, the secret accounts, the affair, I had it all. The day of the hearing, I felt a strange mixture of anxiety and relief. I was tired of the lies, tired of the deception, and tired of feeling like I was fighting a losing battle. But I also knew this could be the turning point. When the judge finally read the ruling, I felt like I could breathe again. The court declared all the forged documents null and void, and claims to the house and the retirement fund were dismissed. Her lawyer's face was a mask of fury, but there was nothing she could do anymore. After the rulings, true colors came out even more. She launched into a tirade, calling me heartless, vindictive, and accusing me of trying to ruin her life. She spat that she had rights because she was my wife, and that I was just trying to control her. But the judge wasn't having it. The court had seen through her lies, and it was clear she'd been trying to manipulate the system all along. Once everything was settled legally, I felt a strange sense of closure. I had lost a lot: trust, a wife I once loved, years of shared dreams, but I also gained clarity. I realized I'd been living in a fantasy, believing that love and loyalty were enough. I learned that some people, especially those who are desperate and greedy, are capable of anything. And I learned that the only way to protect yourself is to be vigilant and prepared. In the aftermath, I decided to sell the house and start fresh somewhere else. I couldn't stand the memories tied to that place anymore. I also closed the offshore accounts and took steps to secure my finances against any future scams. It was a long process of rebuilding, emotionally and financially, but I was determined to move on. I knew I'd never forget what happened, but I also knew I'd come out stronger. Looking back, I wish I had seen the warning signs sooner. I wish I had trusted my instincts more. But I also know that I'm better off without her. The experience taught me a hard lesson about trust, greed, and the importance of protecting what's yours. If I could give advice to anyone in a similar situation, it would be this: stay vigilant, never ignore your gut, and don't be afraid to fight for what's right, even if it means facing the hardest betrayal of your life. Now that everything's settled, I find myself reflecting more than I ever thought I would about trust, betrayal, and what it really means to protect yourself. The thing is, I used to believe that love was enough, that if you loved someone, they'd never do something so cold and calculating. But I learned the hard way that love isn't enough when someone's driven by greed and selfishness. Trust, I realized, is something fragile, something you have to constantly guard, especially when your entire future is on the line. Getting through this has been the toughest thing I've ever done. The pain of betrayal is still fresh, but I've also come out of it with a clearer sense of who I am and what I need to do moving forward. I'm rebuilding my life, piece by piece, and trying to put the pieces of my broken heart back together. I know I'll never forget what happened, but I also know I can't let it define me. One of the biggest lessons I've learned is that people will surprise you, sometimes in terrible ways. It's easy to get caught up in the idea that everyone has good in them, but the truth is, some people will do anything for money or power. That realization has made me more cautious, more aware of the signs I should have seen earlier. I'm not naive anymore. I'm more guarded but also more determined to protect myself and my future. To anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, I want to say, don't ignore the red flags. Trust your instincts. Get legal advice early. Don't let someone manipulate or steal from you no matter how much you love them. It's not about being vindictive. It's about protecting yourself and your hard-earned life. Sometimes, the only way to survive betrayal is to fight back with everything you've got. In the end, I'm grateful I found the strength to stand up for myself. I may have lost a lot, but I gained clarity and resilience. I learned that justice isn't always quick or easy, but it's worth fighting for. And I also learned that sometimes, the best revenge is simply walking away, knowing you've done everything you could to set things right. That's what I plan to do: move forward, rebuild, and never let anyone take advantage of me again.